Happy Easter to you all. It's a pleasant day. I've got the door open and there's going to be some background noise, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. I've been, as you may know, in my previous video or two, been looking at portrait microphones and relating them to portrait lenses. So if you've seen those videos, you'll realise that this is one such beat up, weighty beast of a lens. And the similarities seem to me to be that you want to capture nuances, everything about the face. You don't want to distort it, you don't want colour changes, you don't want excessive contrast. And I was relating that to microphones. So I thought, I've been using microphones a fair bit, doing a fair bit of recording, and I feel I've got quite a handle on this. I find it very helpful to have the visual side of it as well. So what we're looking at then with the lenses is the things I've mentioned, and also they tend to be longer than standard, meaning they magnify, which means the photographer can be further away. That helps isolate, does things to apparent perspective, and helps isolate the subject. They tend to be fast lenses, that's why they're so fat. These things make it difficult and expensive to design, so they're kind of a little bit specialist. The fast aperture being wide means that the depth of focus can be very shallow, focusing on maybe just mostly the eyes starting to go out, or more usually perhaps more of the face and so on. But the background then becomes a blur. You can control that by the aperture, but the fast ones can do that very well, and it means that you tend to isolate your subject from the background in the same way that a microphone might want to, in these microphones, isolate the voice. What I've got then is a number of microphones. Ones that I've decided out of my collection are portrait microphones. They fulfill that specification. And some that I wanted to try that I thought might, but then didn't. And I'm going to explain why. One of the microphones that I thought was in with a chance, and then I decided not, and I'll tell you why now, is the lovely Sennheiser E965 condenser mic. I'm on the Icon Pro at the moment, and I'm going to switch that off and go on to this. Now I'm on the Sennheiser. That's always, I thought I'd set these things up, but no, I'm going to take this one off a bit. So immediately is a lovely mic, but for a portrait I feel that there's something a bit soggy there, and a little bit of that up there. And for me, one of the most important things about the portrait mic is the detail, and I think the detail shows up mostly round about this area. Now I'm going to switch to the Icon Pro, though I'm not including the Icon Pro in this. It's separate. It's if you like, a bit of a specialist mic. It's meant for talking, which is what I'm doing. But if I switch to it, you can probably hear there just isn't the detail. Somehow there isn't the speed. So a lovely mic, but not a high-end portrait mic for me. Incidentally, this desk man. Not only do we have the trim pots doing stuff like this, which is not going to do now because I've just twiddled them, but here's the mute switch on it. So the mute switch. So I have to do them several times to clean them up, and along with the trim pots. Anyway, that's that. The next one that I considered might be in with a chance of being a portrait mic was my trusty Bayer M88. This is one of my trusty Bayer M88, so immediately I'm aware of that show. Again, it's nice, and a little bit of there. If I bring it closer, I'm going to turn this one up a bit as well. There we go, it's a Bayer M88. and I can, and that bit up there, which again is useful for stage and such. It's a dynamic, but for a portrait, no. Next, another lovely mic, the Neumann KMS 105. So Neumann KMS 105, Neumann KMS. I'm aware there of that, but not really. And that. Straight away, I hear all that stuff. Again, a lovely mic and sweet enough, but no. A lovely mic and sweet enough. Let's just try the Icon Pro. A lovely mic and sweet enough. A lovely mic and sweet enough. Let me try and accentuate the sweet bit in case I'm dumbing it down, because these things are quite difficult to be neutral. Another nice and a sweet mic. Another nice and sweet mic. Another nice and sweet mic. Another nice and sweet mic. Another. Ooh. Yeah. So again, the Neumann KMS won't do for a high-end portrait mic either. Back on the Icon Pro. Oh yes, I've got one other that I had hopes for. Hadn't used it for a while. And that's the Biodynamic V96R ribbon mic. I've got kind of hopes and ideas for ribbon mics, but that's probably for another video. So I'm going to try this one, because I know it's fast, but I know it's shaped as well. So I'll do that now. Before I do that, I think maybe I forgot to do the breath thing on the other two. I can't remember. It's been a long time. 3 minutes. So I'll just go through with the breath thing on all of these, because I think that's one of the most revealing parts for detail anyway. So this is the Icon Pro. This is the Sennheiser. This is the M88s. It's kind of got the detail, but the breath is smoothed a bit to me. But the other things wouldn't do for what I'm talking about. The Neumann. Icon Pro. Still not the detail to my ears. Okay, moving across to the ribbon. The V90R. The V90R. The V90R. The V90R. The V90R. It's not as where it is. I was going to say it's not as bright as I remember it up there, but now I do that it is. But it is very sweet. Low end is quite good, actually. Low end is good. Low end is good. Yeah. So yes, it does come close, I feel. And the breath. Comes close. I got hopes for him. There are lots of people, excuse me. There are lots of people doing ribbon mics again these days, it seems, and I do like the idea of them. This, though, I think it's just got a bit too much of that to be a portrait microphone. Though it might be a kind of an old school one, but nonetheless, I excluded it. Same thing is happening with photography. These 185 1.8, 85mm 1.4, and some 50mm 1.2. They're fast lenses. But the other two, the 85 and the 135, the fast ones were considered fairly specialist, and there are some new builds of those from several manufacturers. So there seems to be a wave going with the lenses regarding these specialist optics. Okay, those are there are many microphones, but those are the ones that occurred to me that maybe stood a chance and I decided to exclude them. So now I'm going to go on to the ones that I've chosen that do meet my architects and engineers specification. By the way, this is just me, having a bit of fun, indulging myself, if you don't mind. So, a bit of a baloney alert. None of it would be deliberate, I can assure you, but bear that in mind, and it might not be your thing. You might want something else entirely. So, on I go. All right, you can see one. The Earthworks SR314. I've used this quite a lot for actual singing, and quite exposed singing, just with piano backing. And it just about meets the specification for me. Here it is then. This is the Earthworks SR314. As soon as I said this, just about okay for what I'm talking about. The breath, detail is there, and yeah, it's got some warmth, well controlled, well revealed as well. Low end. Now we're getting into a problem because I'm going to do the breath test. I'm doing it against another Earthworks, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it starts when you get to this kind of level. You're going to do, what are you going to compare it to? A bit. So I have to use my own experience, and I'll be using that as I say things to you that you may not hear. And some of it I'm talking about my experience. So I'll do the breath on this one. You've heard it there. Very good, very similar. This one's got a little bit of that accentuation going on. But it's sufficiently relaxed that I feel, have to be a bit careful with that it still makes the specification for me. Moving on to the next one. Well, yeah, the SR40V. The SR40V. You can hear the SR40V, that part is no longer there. Well, it means no longer there, it's no longer accentuated. The SR40V. The SR40V. And you can maybe hear the little bit of a brooding waiting to come in. But very manageable. Just move it away a bit. Fine. Back the lens off a bit. Fine. Bring the lens in close. Get right up on the face. Get right up on the face. Still very good, and still the clarity there. I'm sounding a bit like a dog there, sorry about that. I'll do the breath between these two then. I think I said about this one, when I first reviewed it some time ago, I think I can hear foam. I think the foam mutes that area just a little. That's what I think. That's what I think I've spotted over the years. I'd be interested to see this one without foam. Earthworks have done that with some of their others. Now they're using mesh. So I'd be interested in that. On to the next one, the final one. Well, I'm on the final one here, and yes, it's the Earthworks SV33, but I can't help but smile. Can't help but smile. Can't help but smile. All that's there, but it's not overblown or accentuated. There's something that I can't, a clarity that the other two haven't quite got somehow. Low, mid, I don't know. Just everything very nicely balanced. And with the breath then, there's a little bit more of the lower thing in there. A little bit more of the lower thing in there. that just seems to support it just a bit compared to the Icon Pro. Well, I know what you're thinking. It's all Earthworks, isn't it? Well, I think bearing in mind what I'm looking at, which I hope you understand by now, there isn't anything else that I've got. So again, I think with these microphones, you've got to start thinking, what do you want? Because that boosting, that accentuation might be useful for you, but it's not what this portrait microphone is about. So I just mentioned that, just it might not be for you. Any others? I haven't come across any others. I find myself wondering, for this purpose again, of course, I say, some of these classic old valve mics, which I'd love to have, and Neumann's, are they, I think they are. Yeah, and many others from back in the day, highly regarded, very, very expensive. But I'd love to get my hands on one and see how they compare for what I'm talking about. I've got the Rode Classic 2, which was meant to be a kind of a little bit of a representation of one of those old, and I really liked it, that's why I bought it. But now I find it just too much of that and the for what I'm talking about. So, I don't know. Horses for courses. Anything else before I go? Oh, maybe check this out if you like. I didn't download them, and also you get copyright complications. But I just happen to, I'm into Deep Purple, heavy rock. And I listened to Browne, which I really liked back in the day. I was trying to play it on the guitar, I just about got it, parts of it. And then, I liked Sail Away, which is from the Browne album as well. And I didn't even really notice that the singer had changed. How embarrassing. It's David Coverdale. But if you like, check out on YouTube and listen to those two tracks, Browne from Deep Purple and Sail Away from Deep Purple. Sail Away's, the voice is clearer. Browne being the heavy rock thing, it's sat back in. Sail Away, the voice, it's still not very forward. But I noticed that you don't hear any of that. I'm sure he's got it there, he's got the voice, but you just don't hear it. So for some types of music, as for some types of photography, these will do it. They'll do any of it. But do you want to pay for it? Why? If you need that and then you need to dirty it up, you can buy a filter which softens it, does stuff, screw it on the front. Of course, these days, just in the computer. Likewise, in the computer. So these masterpieces will do everything, and you can degrade them, and you may not need them. But if you do need them, there's kind of no going back, really. This one's 30 to 40 years old, I think. Probably works out a veritable bargain, come the end of it. This is not so old, but no problems so far. That's enough. Adios.